You still excited? You turn to your neighbor, you tell him or her, I own you.
I own you.
Wait, don't look at my wife and say I own you, I own you.
I own you.
Hey, I get the pleasure, man, there are a lot of $1 million piece going on out there, man. I get the pleasure of introducing our closing speakers this morning. And so honored to do this. Our first speaker, Mr. Tom Dempsey. He's our WFG president. You know, I had a chance to spend some time with him at the golf course, and the one thing that I learned about Tom was that I had an issue I brought up to him. I shared it with him. It was a personal story that there was something that was going on with our team, and he really took the time not only to listen, but to hear it through and say, you know what, let's look into this and let's see what we can do with it. And that was a big deal to me. You know, he's just transitioned to becoming our new president, and but to spend that time and just see the man and who he is, especially on the golf course. He played way better than I did, but you get to see a person in their element when they're more relaxed. Tom, married for over 20 years, one son, who's also a soccer phenom, and Tom Dempsey, our president, also was a former pro soccer athlete. So let's hear it for Tom Dempsey. Our second, hold on. The second person I get to introduce, who loves women's soccer? Born in England, has coached the U.S. women's national team in 2014-2019, has won back-to-back championships, and man, I'm fired up for listening to her. This is going to be an exciting part of our convention, so everybody stand up. And let me hear you, let the Thomas and Mac hear you, and give it up for our two closing speakers.
Introducing at MGM's Grand Garden Arena, head coach of the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team, Jill Ellis. And President of World Financial Group, Tom Dempsey.
I think I want to take all you guys to the next game because I'll have to hook you up with tickets, but this is amazing. Holy cow. Unreal. So happy to be here.
So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So this is going to be more like coffee talk. This is going to be a little bit less like an interrogation. But Jill, I read you said after your first World Cup win in 2015, you wish you had spent a little more time enjoying the moment, but you went right back to work. You had a job to do. Now that you've won your second, did you follow through on your wish?
I did. I think 2015 was kind of a blur, and immediately after that was the Olympics, so I just put my head down and kept grinding. This time, yeah, I wanted to enjoy it more. I think once you've gone through something, you recognize those moments, and actually became a little bit more of a fan in this World Cup, meaning I watched some games and and took it all in, and my family was there. So I certainly tried to absorb more of this one and celebrate a little bit more.
That's fantastic.
More champagne in the locker room, I think.
Oh yeah. We saw, and I don't know if anyone follows her on Instagram, but or the team on Instagram. There's a little bit of champagne
A
popping.
little bit of champagne, a little bit of champagne shower.
Yeah, a little bit more celebrating this time. So, hey, having had that prior experience, not just leading the World Cup win, but actually winning the World Cup, what was different this time around that maybe you didn't expect?
I mean, I think in 2015, we got on the charter to come back, and they said, hey, we're taking you to LA. We're going to have a rally there. And I lived in LA. I'm like, hey, nobody's going to show up at that, you know. And I get there, and there's like 10,000 people. And I was like, wow. And so I really didn't realize, because you're in your bubble, how big the World Cup was and how many fans, you know, followed us. So I think going into this one, I certainly saw more and absorbed more. But I actually think because I had a longer prep time, there weren't really that many surprises, because everything we'd done, playing the tougher opponents, making sure we knew how good everybody was, being more prepared tactically, having a deeper roster, it actually gave us a little bit more. For me, preparing and preparation gives us confidence. So I think there wasn't too many surprises in the tournament. I think we were anticipating and expected a lot of the things to happen.
So I hope everyone's taking notes, because Jill, I spent some time on the phone with her earlier, and I took probably a page full of notes of just some of the tidbits, like being prepared makes you feel like you can do anything. So that's fantastic. So you've accomplished quite a bit. You are, so I'm going to brag, I'm a little bit of a fanboy, just so you all know. It's okay if you pose with pictures with Joe. You're like, hey Joe, can we get a selfie? You've accomplished a lot. You're one of 2 coaches now in the history of the sport. So think about that for a minute. The history of the sport. One of 2 coaches that has won 2 World Cups, but won them back to back. All right? So with all that you've accomplished in your career up to this point, what's the one accolade that you're most proud of?
I mean, I think because I'm a coach, I think it's, everything I do is about people. So I actually think, you know, I actually shared this with my team when we were just in camp. I said, it's not about the matches or the medals, it's really about the moments. And you don't get those moments without people. So I think if I were to say accolade, because I'm not someone to kind of be braggadocious, I actually think it's helping people achieve their goals. I think that's been the biggest reward for me in coaching. Seeing people, even when people fail, it's helping them get back up. I think in terms of just, you know, the tangible thing, I certainly think winning World Cups has been great. And not just because it's about the celebration, it's the summit of our sport, but more because it's what it does to the nation in terms of rallying the pride. It's putting strong women in a platform to be showcased. It's
Hey, you can do the whoosh.
Nice, show me.
All right, so we're gonna teach Jill how to whoosh. Everyone up for a minute. If she gives you this, so you just go like this,
Okay.
and you whoosh until they make as much noise as you think, and then when you're ready to go, isn't that great?
I don't think I could get my fans at the soccer game to do that. That is awesome. I love it.
Later I'm going to teach them the I Believe chant.
There you go. That'd be perfect. But anyways, I think in summary, I just think it's, you know, it's building connections, it's people, it's seeing people achieve, it's seeing them fail, and I think that's what's given me the greatest reward in my career so far.
That's fantastic. So I don't know if everyone in this audience knows, but Jill, we were talking quite a bit about who WFG is and what WFG does and how people actually join WFG as an independent business owner. But one of the interesting things about Jill is she, as we talked, the more we were speaking, the more we realized that she's a lot like every one of you, in the sense that her family are immigrants to the United States. In her country, in her native country, in England, playing soccer was unladylike, so she didn't start playing soccer until she actually came to the US. Her family came here for the opportunity because they believed there was something better coming here than what they were experiencing there. So there are a lot of commonalities, but I'll tell you one other commonality that she has with everyone in this room. A lot of you start in our business part-time. So Jill, ironically, started coaching part-time. She was working a 9 to 5, just like most of you started. And then she decided she was going to take a leap of faith. and she decided she was going to leave a $40 to $50 to $60,000 a year job and go into coaching full time. When did you know you were ready to make that leap?
I mean, I think it was, you know, I said this a lot when people sort of ask me about that situation. I followed passion over a paycheck. It really came to that. I knew what I loved, and, you know, there wasn't very many female coaches in coaching. There wasn't really role models, but I just, you know, I've been raised, my family, you know, probably like you guys, you know, they put in 15, 16-hour days. My dad made 15 grand a year. It cost $5 to put me through school. Like, we really, you know, I just really embraced the opportunity to pursue my own path. So when I called my mom, I said, Mom, I've been offered a job coaching for $6,000 a year. And she's like, are you freaking nuts? And my dad, who's a coach, goes, oh, God bless you, sweetheart, that's fantastic. It was, so, you know, I had their support. And in fact, my mom, who didn't really grow up watching soccer, she ended up being the loudest person, yelling at the refs all the games. So she bought in. But I think ultimately it was just something for me that I just personally couldn't see myself. I wanted my job to be not a job. I wanted to do something I loved, and I did. My dad said to me when I was little, if you're a good person and you've got some ability, you'll always land on your feet, so take high risks, and that's kind of what I did.
There we go. Was there ever a moment that you thought, what in the world did I just do?
Well, I was at UCLA for 12 years. By the time, yeah, Bruins, woo! All right, we'll give the Trojans some love too. So I think it was by my fourth time going to the Final Four to the national championship and came away, we didn't win. I'll be honest, at that point I was like, wow, is it me? You know, is there something you're doing? Is this what I want to pursue? And actually what the revelation is it wasn't about that piece of hardware. You know, that's when I suddenly realized I'm not in that just for that trophy. Sure, you want to win, but it's the process. And I remember my dad saying to me, after my sixth Final Four, we didn't win, honey, you're destined for something bigger. So, you know, after the World Cup, he said, see, I told you. But I think honestly at that point in my career, I was like, wow, this is, you know, this wasn't the perfect roadmap. It wasn't the elevator to the top, it was, you know, this. And I think actually it's made the journey better.
Oh, that's awesome. So I've heard, I mean, I've tried to do as much research as I could on you. I told Jill that I even called someone that I know that knows her and was trying to get a little dirt on her, a little insight, but I didn't really have to dig that deep.
He actually wanted to try out for my team. I said, you know,
yeah, it's
the wrong gender.
Yeah.
And he said he'd do the water guy. I said, you're hired.
That's it. I love it. I kind of feel like I know your parents. Your dad is quoted in the paper way more than you are, ironically, but he's played a big role in your life and kind of led you into the profession.
Yeah. He, you know, my dad, you know, I think some of the qualities, you know, that my dad is the eternal optimist. If you go into coaching, you cannot be a pessimist. You have to always be the optimist. And my father, you know, I get a speeding ticket, he's like, it's just a sign to slow down. I mean, it don't matter. Like, I'm having a really crappy day, and I can't find my wallet or my keys. Well, imagine how excited you're going to be when you find it. So this guy is always the optimist, which I think you need if you're going to be a coach, because, you know, you're always, as a coach, you're always in somebody's crosshairs, whether it's the media, players, you know, fans, because you put yourself out there. And, but I think my dad, you know, I watched him coach, his personality, and he just gave me a lot in terms of confidence and support. I always knew he had my back. Before every game I get a text, he's just figured out emojis, so now I got like 900 of those hearts floating at me. So yeah, it's, but he's great, he's fantastic.
He sounds great. So from your perspective, he was a coach. When he came to the U.S., he started an academy in Washington, D.C. area. But you must have watched him do his work as you were growing up. Is there anything that you learned in particular that you kind of, that led you into the profession, or things that you emulated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when I watched my dad, you know, we ran soccer camps, and so he would go out and he'd work with 6-year-olds. And then he would go out and work with 19-year-olds, and his ability to make it relatable, to make it engaged, like I think, I think what he said to me is you have to be able to connect with the people on a level that they can, it's relatable. So I think watching him work in that regard, I think the passion with which he worked with, I think he just loved what he did. And I just, again, for me it was following passion, and I just saw the guy work, and it just made it kind of inspiring.
That's fantastic. So can we transition and talk a little bit about the team?
Yep. Sure.
So there's a trick, and I know everyone in this room tries to do this, but there's science and process to going about assessing talent. How do you go about assessing talent? Because you have some of the most amazing athletes in the world in their field on your team. So how did you go about assessing that talent?
I mean, I think it's there's a lot of processes that go behind finally selecting a 23-player roster. I think it's initially we have a network, we have a framework of identification. And I think kind of the most important thing there is that the people out there that are actually working with you and for you, they see the same thing. The profile of a player, like what are the qualities that you need to be an elite performer at the women's national team level. And so I think it's identifying at that level. It's then bringing a player in. And sometimes as a coach, you see a player and they're not quite ready yet, but you see something. I mean, Rose was a perfect example. Rose Lavelle was a player that her first camp.
Some Rose Lavelle fans out there.
Yeah, Rose is she's fantastic. But when her first camp, and she'll be the first to admit it, she sort of struggled a little bit, came in with a little bit of an injury. But you just know that there's that quality there. And it's not just the physical, it's not just the technical, it's also the mental piece. That's such a huge part. I mean, we've had a lot of great athletes come in with the national team and they don't make it because that psychological dimension, that internal fortitude, it isn't there. So I think, Rose was the complete package, and so then it's a matter of being patient. She was hurt and out for a year, and I just kind of hung in there with her because I knew that she would be big in this World Cup for us with the quality she has.
Yeah, and she was big in the World Cup.
She was big, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. So how much do you rely on your team? I know Tony has been your assistant coach for a long time now. How much did you rely on your team to help you assess the talent, pay attention to the details, and we'll get into details later.
Yep.
But how much did you rely on Tony?
I mean, Tony and Graham, and I have a sports scientist, Dawn. I mean, I had, 4 or 5, and our manager. What I realized when I was a young coach, I was pretty demanding and independent. And as I kind of aged and got a little bit wiser, I realized that, the collaboration of people and making sure that you draw the strengths out from the people around you. Graham does our set pieces, and he's fantastic in the level of detail that we have to get into. And I remember when I took this job, a former coach said to me, if you actually look at how an NFL team is run, they have an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams, etc. Because you want to give everybody so much attention, it's almost like you have to share the load. And so I relied on them a lot. I give them massive credit, massive props. I think when you're a leader, oftentimes the spotlight is on you, but I think it's so important that you shine that spotlight on other people and you recognize that together you are a lot stronger.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you guys are leaders and you work with people, and I think, the most empowering thing you can do with your team is, with your staff, is to trust them. And I think trust them with their qualities. You bring them on board because they have those qualities, and they're a compliment to me. I'm not an expert at set pieces straight up, but I think the vision and those parts of what you do, you can share that, and then you work together.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you had when you took the team over, it was 2014?
Yep.
When you became national team coach, the team was ranked #1 in the world. So typically, a lot of coaches would say, you know what, it's going to be tough to come in. There might be only one way to go. So, but when you came in, you had a different view. We talked yesterday a little bit about stretching the vision and pushing ourselves. You came in and said, we're not good enough to win the World Cup. We're ranked #1 in the world, but with this team and this talent and the structure and the discipline and the organization we have here, we're not good enough to win the World Cup. Yep. How difficult was it, and what did you do to sort of change the mentality there?
I think it started with just my perspective, because if you're the top in your field, then you always want to continue to create that separation. And if you're not, you're trying to close the gap. So what does that space look like in there? And you know, it's the pursuit of excellence, and there's no finish line for excellence. So what I did with my players at the very first meeting, I put up the quote. Many of you probably heard it. It's even if you're on the right track, if you sit there, you'll get run over. Because what I wanted to do was to engage them. When you deal with motivated people, they don't want to sit where they are. They want to continue to evolve. And so I think a large part of it was poking them a little bit to say, hey, listen, you're number one in the world. We just won the Olympic gold. But if we want to win this next hurdle, we've got to make sure we continue to create that separation. And so they bought in. I mean, it was setting a roadmap. It was setting goals and expectations and working to get better. But I think ultimately you challenge those people because they don't want to just sit where they are. Elite people want to get better.
So I'm sure some of you can relate to elite people wanting to get better. But as we go through our day, you know, here we talk about 3-3-30. We talk about a lot of things that are structured that if you do every single day, you will have success. Same thing in soccer. So how do you have these professional athletes that in many cases are world famous, right? They can't walk on the street without being stopped. How do you motivate them or keep them motivated to do the things that are necessary in the daily grind? So the you know, cone drills and all the foot skills and the things that they were doing when they were, you know, U14s. How did you keep them motivated so that it wasn't just a daily grind?
I think multiple ways. I think when you put together an activity or drill, it's not just a simple piece, it's more complex. So there's maybe 4 or 5 different demands within that drill itself. So in everything we do, it involves a decision making. So when you go out there, you can just pass the ball back and forward, or now you can see a defender coming, you've got the timing, you've got different things. So you create an environment where there's actually a learning piece to what they do. I think competition is also a way that keeps them motivated because, heck, you know, it's the older players want to continue to stay on top, the younger players want to chase them down. So I think that's healthy for an environment. I love people that, you know, that just want to just continue to compete. And I just think part of it is the players you bring in there, the culture you create in that environment. It is not about being where you are, it's where you want to be. And I think the players buy into that. So whether it's, you know, I watched a player like Crystal Dunn. You know, Crystal would come in and she'd start to, you know, work on her bench shot. Instead of just this way, she'd work on open up. Because they want to add more. We always say about adding more clubs to the bag so you can play every shot. So again, I think it all centers around the fact that these players have a desire and you create a culture and a climate where it's challenging to them. And it is detail-oriented. And the beauty of soccer is every game is different.
Yep.
Every opponent is different. So you constantly have to, you know, mix things up.
That's a great advice for everyone in this room. Fantastic. So you mentioned a little earlier, and I want to take a step back. You mentioned as you've grown older and wiser in coaching, the more you mature, the more you're more comfortable stepping back and letting your coaching play out in front of you. Can you give a specific example of a time where you have had that happen, where you set the wheels in motion, but you have to step back and be patient and let it transpire in front of you?
Yep. I mean, hopefully you guys watched the France game, yeah?
Jill, I don't know if you know, but you weren't supposed to win the World Cup. Like, France was favored to win this World Cup.
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Je ne sais pas.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, and I think people, you know, the general public is so educated about soccer. I mean, soccer is not a sport like football or basketball where you can do this. It really is about a sport that you have to prepare everything beforehand. And that's what I mean. Then on game day, you let that work shine, so to speak, and you let all the labors that you've done to that point hopefully play out. Now, you have to manage the game and you have to make decisions within the game. But I think France was the perfect game where we actually started, so we scheduled, I chased France. I wanted to get them on our schedule in January. And the reason I did was because I knew that to win the World Cup, we'd have to go through this team. So we played them in January. They were in season, we were not. We traveled over there. They were obviously playing at home. And we lost that game 3-1. But it was so valuable because what I said to the players after the game on the field, I said, that is the best this team is, because I knew they had most of their starters. We have got so much more to do. And then it was the work, it was the process, it was making sure we had multiple systems in place. It was getting the right players, it was the mentality piece. Creating that environment, and then on game day, I'll be honest, people are like, you seem, the media the day before the game, you seem so relaxed. I said, because we are ready. And that just, we got confidence in that, so.
That's fantastic. So the team faced adversity, and I read that you had a similar path in 2014, 2015 in the build-up to the World Cup. I'm going to read a quote from you, which I think is...
No swearing in it.
No, there's no swearing in it, that's for sure. We let Dave Paulson handle that earlier today. So the quote was, "The difference at the top level between winning and losing is not just dealing with adversity, but thriving in it." So you taught your team how to thrive in adversity in 2015 and the build-up to 2019. Were there a couple of particular players that either struggled or those that you thought just absolutely you weren't sure how they do, but they just stepped up to their game to rise to the occasion?
Yeah, I'm a nightmare in my personal logistics, but I'm a planner when it comes to wanting to win a trophy. So I think, for example, in 2015, I took the team down to Brazil, and logistics were hard. Fields were rained out. It was just a lot of trouble, in terms of logistics. And I said to the team after that, any curveball that gets thrown at us, we'll be able to hit out the ballpark. Then I took them to France, and we got beat there in that build-up. And I said, this is going to help us be better. So I purposely made it harder, because then if you are steeled in that and you are strong in that, then when you step into that arena, you've already experienced that intensity. And what I know about the players and what I know about myself is that the bigger the moment, the bigger the demand, the more the response. And so I think when you go through all these hardships and you know what it takes, and the ebb and flow of a game to the decision making, when you've gone through that in a period of build-up, when you actually get in that moment, that is the moment to kind of shine and just, I think it brings out the best in me. I was the kid that did my 20-page paper, 11 p.m. the night before it was due. Now, you might think I was a procrastinator, but in actuality, what I knew is the pressure to get it done actually made me better. So I enjoy that. I think it makes you, I said to the players, I knew in big games, I actually worry more in games against not the top teams, because then it's kind of, but against the big teams, the bigger the moment. The player I'll reference has to be Ellis, our goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Alyssa
Nair.
Alyssa had, she had, our previous goalkeeper, Hope, was best goalkeeper in the world, had won a ton of medals, very, very successful. And Alyssa was now stepping into those shoes. And if I give you an example, every time you play for the national team, you get a cap. So I think Hope had like over 200 caps, and Alyssa had probably, when I started, like 13. And so she had these massive shoes to fill. The media, the fans, everybody, there was so much expectation on this player. And she's a very quiet person. But I remember meeting with her and I just said, listen, tune everything out. You've got the ability, you've got the skill set. We're behind you, you're our one. And so, you want to build that up. And then to see her make that save in the World Cup to push through to the final was her moment to shine. Big time.
That's awesome. So you mentioned your prior goalkeeper. I would imagine that so many big personalities in one place. And over time, I'm sure they develop. When they come in, they might be a little more humble. And then as they gain more popularity, they kind of expand. How do you deal with conflict amongst such big personalities?
I think a team environment, I think part of when you build your team and you select your team, you have to know the fabric of the people. And so I think part of it is you want to make sure, character certainly counts. You want the best talented players. So I think part of when you build a team, you certainly look at, the people and how it's going to mesh. But I think ultimately, everything is about connection. So I think, if you're dealing with conflict, if you already have an established connection with somebody and you've built, you might not agree, but there's a mutual, you can agree to disagree, there's a mutual respect there. I think that's part of it. I also think, I'm a big believer in getting out ahead of things. So, I'll tell the players, listen, this is, in 2016, after the Olympics, I said to the players, we're going to have a hard reset on the program. And it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, it's going to be tough, you're going to be uncomfortable. So you tell them all that so that when it happens, you can kind of remind them, hey, this is what we knew was going to happen. And it's, to me, to be on the national team, that's how it should be. There's no gimmies. But I think, I think conflict is, and then I think the final thing, how I personally deal with it, is just to be very direct. I'm probably a bit more, I don't candy coat things, but a little bit more tempered in how I deliver information. But I think people appreciate, especially people that want to get better, they certainly appreciate the information coming in a way that's going to help them take the next step. It's not just, hey, this isn't good enough. Hey, listen, this is not good enough now, but this is where we need to get to. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, as leaders, you're going to have people that are going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
And, I think that's part of being in that role. But again, I just think it's about understanding the fabric of the people around you and being able to work with them.
So you mentioned there are going to be people that disagree with you. I mean, there are critics. You had critics left and right.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you knew that. People that didn't like your decisions on substitutions or certain players. I mean, you had two massive players that you had the courage to make a decision on, right? Just one with Abby Wambach and then Carly Lloyd, and sort of having them play a different role. Did those relationships that you had developed with them over time kind of help with those decisions, knowing that it was in the best interest of the team for them to now take a different role on the team?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think the more, you don't want to blindside people, so the more you can, again, get ahead of it. I mean, I met with Abby when I took over the team, and I said, Abby, I don't care if you have one leg, I'm taking you to the World Cup because of all the things that you are. But I'm not sure if you'll be a starter, if you'll be a reserve, if you'll come in, what your role would be. Can you do this? And just the quality of that person was just like, yes.
Yeah.
Carly's similar in terms of, I think, it was too soon to define a role when we were building, because it was a longer build-up. But it was, essentially it was, Carly wanted to be a starter. And I said, you know what? I'm good with that. You want to always achieve more and want to aspire for more, but make sure you embrace what you have, and she did, complete professional.
Absolutely.
I think, when you make those decisions, I think two things. One, I've always tuned out the noise. I think that's part of when you're a leader. You have your group. I mean, I don't really care what people think. I don't need to read the paper to know how good my team played or how poorly we played. I was there. So I think part of what you do is you have to be comfortable. I knew what the job entailed going in, so I think it was like, okay, you just, in the moment, you make the decisions. And I think the thing my dad taught me when I was little is, if you make the decisions best for the team, sometimes you have to cut a player, sometimes you have to let a staff member go. There's some really hard decisions. You have to lower a person's pay, because the contracts are different. But again, I think what you can sleep with at night is knowing that you're doing what you believe is best in your heart. It's not personal. People might take it personally, but the reality is you can trust that because it's your decision, it's your focus to put the team first.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's worthy of a round of applause. So I said on the stage last night, and I'll say this time and time again, we're all products of our environment. I believe that how you do everything is how you do anything, right? So if you pay attention to the details, things seem to fall in place, meaning it's almost like the harder you work, the luckier you get. But so I read that coming into the 2015 World Cup, there were some players on the team that had been there for quite some time that were just blown away by the level of detail of the scouting reports that you put together. Is there a particular memory that you have of where paying attention to those details really truly made a difference, sort of set the team apart?
I think, and even actually I would probably say in 2019, we even amped that up even more.
Nice.
I think because, from 15 to 19, the level of play across the board got so much better. But I think, I think for example, we probably had a database of almost 150 penalty kicks, almost on every player from the time they were young, of our opponent.
Wow.
We had that. we had, so one of the things I actually took away from like American football, so I said to the players, I'm like, most of the time when a team wins a championship, they have to go through penalty kicks. So we're going to simulate that. We're not going to see going to penalty kicks as a failure. We're going to embrace that as part of the game. So it was the detail of, we even, we filmed every penalty kick. We simulated noise. We actually recorded when we were in France and they were booing us. We took that and we pumped that through this, when we were training. Because I wanted to make sure that the players had experienced all that. So I think in terms of, detail, what, the France game specifically, France wanted to create a transition game, meaning they wanted you to have the ball so they could win it and then boom, hit you on the transition. And so at times we pressed them and at times we sat out off them. Training in that regard, knowing your opponent so well, but also playing to your strengths. I think that was, that was probably a game where we implemented a lot of details. But I agree, I think I think for me, details gives us confidence. We knew teams inside and out, but more importantly, we knew ourselves inside and out. We knew what our strengths were, we knew how to maximize. Every player knew their role, they could speak a common language, and so it was very easy for them to interact, to communicate, and to really relate to each other. So they felt, 23, they felt invincible going on the pitch.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So we talked earlier about the fact that France was given a 22% chance of winning, according to Nielsen.
What was ours?
Yours was 14%.
What?
Yeah.
All right.
So, I know, so much for that. I think the Vegas odds makers were a little off here. The French media had a field day with the celebrations, and they were alluding to the fact that your team might be a little cocky, and that was going to help them in the head-to-head match. Winning, and that the arrogance would expose your team's weakness, right? Your team, though, and I believe this is from your leadership, showed a very pragmatic and self-aware approach when you played France. What did you notice about France in their lead up to that game, and how did you counter your talent with how they set up?
Well, I'm going to answer that question, but I'm actually going to say this because we got battered for celebrating 13 goals, right?
Yeah.
This is why I say it, like the 13th goal, because those goals, it's about your players, and the 13th goal happened to be Carly Lloyd's.
Yep.
And to see the journey that Carly had been on, the sacrifices that she made, how hard it had been for her to score in the World Cup. It wasn't about the scoreline, that was about celebrating that person. And I think people kind of lose sight of that that's truly, and it truly is that moment. I mean, you should YouTube Sammy Lewis's parents seeing their daughter, and they've driven that kid to ultimate trainings. All the to see her score. Maybe it was the 9th goal. You can't not be joyous about that. And what I also know is I don't think it was. I think in a way it's disrespectful to your opponent to kind of dial it down.
Yeah.
I mean, Thailand beat people in the qualifiers 8-9-0, so it's part of the game. But I think ultimately, we were. Goals counted, so we wanted to make sure we had enough. In terms of, the France, all right, well, we had plenty, okay. But I think as it relates to France, it's ironic because the Germany coach in 2015, before the semifinal, said the exact same thing. The Americans are arrogant, and it'll hurt them. And I explained to the media, I don't think it's an arrogance. I think the confidence, the way you carry yourself, they're not going out and demoralizing the opponent. They're not trash talking. They are talking up themselves. And I think for women to do that, I think that is unbelievable. So, in so many different arenas, it's, you're not, and so I think that was a showcase actually. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and self-esteem is the biggest thing I want my kid to have, because that will carry her through life, to believe in herself. So, I know I'm getting France, hang on.
No, it's great, I love it.
But I think I think the way we carried ourselves, I think the players were so confident because we were prepared. I think if you asked any of them, they knew exactly the job to do. And I actually think France hadn't done their homework, and the fact that they didn't know at times we could shift into a back five. We did that purposely. We knew they were going to attack us on the wide areas. We got numbers central. We countered that because in a game, it's an ebb and a flow. It's like your lives. Sometimes you're here, sometimes you're... And you've got to ride out that ebb and flow. And so in that 90-plus minute game, we wanted to make sure we had enough tools to manage those moments. The other thing that I was, we always play at home, and we always have massive crowds like this. It's so different when you're playing on the road and you're getting booed by 30,000 people, trust me. So I also knew we had to have a countermeasure to that, and that was at times making it very hard for France to play. We didn't give them what they wanted. We kind of sat in a little bit and then we hit them on the, so I think we manipulated it in such a way that it showcased our strengths, but I also think it showcased their lack of preparation.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned your daughter, and you mentioned essentially girl power, but I think
that's the Queen's way.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to modify the swoosh to this little one. That's for all the ladies out there.
There you go. The team was truly on a mission in 2019. So this, I have two other questions. This will be my second to last question. They were out to prove to the world that they were as good as they were advertised. That was one. But two, they were almost, I think, as important to them was to the pursuit of gender equality, and that played into their sense of purpose.
100%. Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about sort of what the conversation was like amongst the team in terms of defining their mission, and then how that helped drive them towards the ultimate goal?
Yeah. I mean, I think the, mission matters most was a common theme for us. It was, when we were having a tough day, or when, things weren't going right, or a player would pick up an injury, we just stayed focused on what we had to do because it pushes you through those tough times. So I think that was in the forefront. I think, I was actually sharing this to somebody else. These are women, and they have a phenomenal platform that I think it's wonderful because they're not just athletes. They are human beings that have lives outside of sport, and so to utilize the platform to speak about world and life things, I think was fantastic. I mean, I think winning certainly garners more attention, but the women internal in our bubble, there's not a lot of conversations about, in the locker room, it's about that. It's really a sense of purpose. What they realized and what they knew is if they could showcase the strength, the determination, all those qualities that helped us lift the trophy, that in and of itself speaks volumes to all the sponsors out there that this is a product that is marketable. And these women deserve to be showcased.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
I get asked a lot about pay equity, and I said this, if my daughter's doing the same job with the same experience, with the same level of pressure as a guy, she better get paid the same.
So the good news is here at WFG, everyone receives the same compensation for the same work.
Well, I'm just gonna attack here and throw a hook at her. You know I'm looking for a job, right?
Yeah. You're going to have about 22,000 of your closest friends ask you to sign an AMA, just so you know. So that actually leads me to my last question, by the way. So Jill and I had a conversation a week and a half ago, and it was a great conversation. We hung up the phone, and then like 30 minutes later, Susan Davies comes in and says, "Did you know Jill is stepping down as head coach of the U.S. Women's National Team?" So I heard you say that a position like this has sort of a timestamp on it. It's got a beginning and an end. So can you talk a little bit about that, and then talk about what's next? I mean, you're going to be a part of U.S. Soccer forward, but yeah, maybe WFG.
I tried very much to do my homework when I I get to connect with a group of people and to read about the mission and the vision and the people that are connected to what you do. I will say it is very intriguing and it's very. I stand in a locker room of 23 powerful women. This is a powerful group, I can tell.
No doubt.
So yeah, I mean, I think I've always, I do enjoy change. I do like different challenges, and I kind of said this, and hopefully it doesn't come across in an arrogant way, but when you climb Mount Everest twice, do you really need to go up that peak again? So I think I'm ready to do a little bit on a personal level. I think on a professional level, it was, to do 2 World Cups is actually kind of a long time as a national team coach. It's 150, 200 days sometimes when you're in a tournament format on the road, and obviously I have a personal life as well. So I think it was a culmination of my personal feelings, professionally, ready to try a different challenge. So I'm excited about the future. I really am.
Well, we're extremely grateful to have had you as our women's national team coach here in the United States. I don't envy the person who steps into your shoes. They have very big shoes to fill. But on behalf of everyone here at WFG, we truly do appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Coach and I were talking backstage, and we've got another coach here within WFG. He's been coaching for a long, long time, but he, like me, is a little bit of a fanboy. So we've got a token of our appreciation, but I'd like to ask Coach Swan Wynn to come out on stage. All right, let's hear it. Would you guys mind hearing from a $14 million ringer? All right, ladies and gentlemen, Swan Wynn.
Introducing Executive Chairman Swan Wynn.